This is My First Job in Sports, the show created to kickstart your journey toward a successful career in the sports industry. Presented by SBRnet, your comprehensive source for data focused on sports fans and more. Here's your host of My First Job in Sports, Neil Schwartz.
Welcome to this episode of My First Job in Sports. Of course, as our lovely announcer said, I'm Neil Schwartz, your host, along with Dr. Ashley Gardner from Temple University. Dr. G, how are you today?
I am incredible. How are you, Neil?
I'm good too. It's Friday we're doing this on, so, I'm looking forward to the weekend. And, as we know, my first job in sports is all about providing some information, education, motivation, inspiration, navigation. I like to think of us as the GPS of helping students get a job in sports. Dr. G, there is so much going on in sports right now. I mean, from the torpedo bat story in baseball to what's going on with the WNBA, and of course, what's going on right now, the men's Final Four is in progress. What are some of the things that are capturing the interest of your students, in class?
Yeah, one big thing is NIL and this new deal, well, not really deal, but this new agreement they're about to come to, right? They're really interested in NIL and transfer portal. They love everything on that college scene. They're also really interested in transgender athletes in sports and the sex testing, which really surprised me.
Yes.
That's a polarizing topic.
Yes.
And they want to talk about it. So that shocked me. So that's one big thing that we're talking about. And then obviously March Madness. I come into the classroom every day and I'm like, y'all, who's winning tonight? So from things that's complicated to sex testing all the way down to who's winning.
Did you do a bracket pool?
Myself, I only did it with the women. I only did mine with the women. I didn't know much about the men.
Okay. I actually have two of the schools that are in the finals, but I have to say I'm rooting for Florida to make it to the national championship. I'm a little bit biased. I like to say that my daughter and my money both went to the University of Florida. So, I have to kind of rooting for the home team. I do live in Florida. But again, we've got a great interview today. We're going to be speaking to Gabby Mayo. Gabby is an analyst, operations analyst with the Cincinnati Reds. She went to school right here down here in Florida at FAU. I'm real close with one or two of the professors at FAU. They're running a great program. Just like a great program being run at Temple. Hey, I want to remind people also about our Get in the Game event, November 7th through the 9th in Baltimore. You're going to be hearing more and more about it as we get into the year a little bit more. Be sure you follow us on social media, like us, comment, and, whatever you want to say about us, we're willing to read. So let's get to Gabby Mayo, who is operations analyst for the Cincinnati Reds, who are probably how many games into the season so far, Gabby?
I think tonight makes the sixth game.
Wow, 6 out of 162. So there's a long way to go. Usually, we'd like to start off by having our guests give a little bit of their background. Gabby, what does an operations analyst for the Cincinnati Reds do? And then maybe if you want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about your journey into the sports business.
Yeah, so for me, a baseball operations analyst, I kind of mainly focus with the major league team and then our amateur scouting department. It kind of looks different for other baseball operations analysts, depending on where they focus. But for me, a lot of that is going to be amateur scouting stuff, which is kind of a little bit of a different schedule than the major league team. So right now we're pretty busy, and then June, July is our busiest with all the prep for the draft. And then of course the draft in July. And that all kind of starts around December. So December to July is kind of where I'm the most busy. And then, here and there do some more ad hoc research for our major league team. So that's kind of the gist of what I do for baseball operations. And starting out in baseball, I actually started with Florida Atlantic University's baseball team. I went there for undergrad and grad school. And I worked for the baseball team for 5 of my 6 years there, and just an incredible experience. And honestly wouldn't be where I am today without that experience. So I kind of did a number of things from just helping out with some drills on the field, some stats, helping our baseball operations coordinator, and then doing a lot of video stuff for them. And then I did, in the summer of 2020, I believe, I did or 2021, sorry. I worked with the Pulaski River Turtles. It was with the Appalachian League that USA Baseball kind of took over. So it was like a collegiate summer league, and was a baseball operations coordinator there, kind of doing more travel and food and like roster construction. And after I graduated from grad school, I worked with the Marlins FCL team doing TrackMan. And then shortly after that, got hired by the Reds as an intern, and now as a full-time baseball operations analyst.
Now, what I love about your journey, Gabby, is that it was very baseball focused. So you clearly knew that baseball is where you wanted to go into. Why baseball?
So my brother, I have an older brother, younger sister. We were all kind of in sports, but my older brother played baseball, and it was more just like, local in town, that kind of stuff. And my dad coached him. So just kind of grew up around it. And one day they needed someone to keep score. I was kind of always hanging out, so I kept score, and just really kind of fell in love with the game. And then at one point in, I believe, my junior year of high school, one of the players was like, why don't you be an agent? And I was like, interesting, but I don't think I want to go that route. But kind of looking into that kind of just opened up possibilities. Being from Connecticut, we have no major sports teams. We have some minor league teams here and there, but, working in professional sports isn't a thing. So him mentioning that kind of just opened my world to all of this. And the more I looked it up, the more just fascinating a career in baseball sounded.
You talk a little bit about, let's go back to, education wise. And you said, you really kind of got your start, in the sports business at FAU. In fact, I spoke to one of your professors today, coincidentally, Dr. Dan Cornely, and we're actually working on a project together. Tell me a little bit about what the experience was like at FAU and how that really kind of directed you towards, getting you started in your sports career.
Yeah, so I, in undergrad, I just did a finance major. We didn't have sports management undergrad. And speaking with the baseball coach, kind of suggested finance would be a good route for me to go, being that I wanted to work in a front office. So I was working with the baseball team and kind of wanted to pursue a master's. And FAU, has a, renowned sports management program, nationally ranked, a really great program. And so was just kind of fortunate to be in a position to just kind of naturally transition, being that I did my undergrad there. And just the experience, one with the baseball team, just the knowledge I gained, the people I met, but honestly changed my life. But then just the experiences and the classes I got to take with the Sport MBA program were, a huge part of my journey, and especially just the whole networking opportunities and listening to people come in and speak to our classes was just huge. I think for me, I kind of knew what path I wanted to go to, but I know a lot of my friends and classmates, listening to people come in and talk about their job and their experience, it opened up so many opportunities that people didn't realize were a thing until they heard this person talk. So I think that was, a really special thing that my program did that was just really helpful.
And Gabby, can you dig deeper into your master's experience? Because, for example, I got my master's because I needed to buy time. I was like a friend. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So can you talk about why you pursued that master's and really talk about the value of getting a master's degree? Because I have a lot of students that don't really know if they want to get their master's and if there's even value, if that master's degree will really matter when it comes to trying to get a job. So can you talk about that?
I think for me, it was just always something that, everyone kind of preached was valuable. And, now having done it, just it's something that helps set you apart from people who don't have a master's. It's extra education, extra connections that, I couldn't get from undergrad. And I think especially for those who go to bigger schools, my classes in undergrad were 100 plus kids. There's no kind of relationships with the teachers and professors and whatnot. And I think that was another really cool thing is you're a lot more specialized in your master's program. There's a lot more focus on exactly what you want instead of just a very broad thing. And there's a lot more relationship making and connections to make with professors who have a lot of connections, and a lot of them are doing the professing on the side and they're actually working in the sports industry during the day. So I think for me, that was one of the biggest things.
I work with a number of schools, both at the undergraduate, graduate, and even at the kind of postgraduate level in some cases. And, I always ask, a lot of folks what are some of those skills that you picked up while you were in school that have kind of translated for you in the real world?
I think biggest thing is just going to be, as I mentioned a lot, and as people are going to mention a lot, is just how to make connections, how to network. It wasn't something I ever really did. I grew up in a smaller town in one of the smallest states in the country. Everyone knew everyone since the moment you were born. So moving somewhere, I didn't know anyone, going to this program, and these are people that are going to help me with my career. Like, I needed to figure out how to talk to people and how to sell myself, make those elevator pitches and whatnot. And so that was, kind of the biggest skill I took out of there, because now working in sports and even just trying to get a job in sports, that was the biggest thing in helping me land that role. And a lot of that is what I learned from school and my master's program.
And I'm going to ask a similar question. Instead of skills, what are some classes that you found that were able to translate into the industry the best?
So I think especially, I wish I took more of them. I only kind of took one or two that was kind of needed. And looking back, it's something I wish I took more of. And I highly recommend people take. But in the sports industry and baseball, coding and the analytics, it is such a big part of the game now and continues to grow. And I took those basic coding. I took those basic analytics classes. That definitely helped give me a baseline understanding. But, taking those coding classes, especially really set you apart from others in the job search and just are really good skills to have. And then I will say, kind of more on a personal side, my sports law class, I love law kind of stuff and, also doing what I do. Not that I deal with the law much, but there is certain components that do, at the end of the day, come into play when we're making certain decisions and whatnot. So I think having that little bit of background was really cool for me.
Yeah, one of the things we hear from a lot of students when we talk to them is that they wish they had taken, let's say, a more advanced Excel class, or maybe learned a little bit about, how to work in our studio. Or, these are all things that I work in almost every day. But the students don't always get exposed to that. Something interesting here. I met Dr. Gardner last year at our Get in the Game event, and it's a wonderful event and a lot of students. But one of the things I found is that a lot of the younger students, and even juniors, we didn't have too many sophomores there, but even seniors, they tend to be a little shy, and they get a little intimidated. What sorts of advice would you have for those students that are maybe in that kind of shy category and might be a little bit of feel a little intimidated?
Speaking as one of those people, okay. I, honestly avoided those places because I was just so shy and so, intimidated and everything. And I just wouldn't have done well, I felt. So I straight up avoided them. And, that was another thing that would have definitely helped me in my career. And I was fortunate that it still worked out. But as I kind of now I'm on the other side of it, as people that, with the teams that are hiring and whatnot, everyone there is intimidated. Everyone there is scared. Some just played off better than others.
Sure.
So everyone's kind of in the same boat. You're not alone in those feelings. And I think it's just maybe a little harsh to put it this way, but just something you got to suck up and just try to push yourself to get through it and do it, because it is one of the greatest things you will do for your career and just life in general.
So to me, it sounds like it's all about being bold, right? Just get over it, suck it up, buttercup, and be bold. And to me, that's also related to networking, because networking is not a passive activity. Okay, you have to be into it, you have to be bold. So what are some strategies or some areas of advice to help students strategically network?
One of the biggest things that I notice in these events now, kind of on the other side, is if you're going to the event, it'll tell you who's going to be there. It'll tell you, it gives you a lot of that information, kind of studying it almost before you're going, because
Sure.
I mean, you don't have to put like an hour into this or everything, but know who you're going to meet. I don't know, even if you're just going to meet anyone who will talk to you, like at least have an idea. You know, people will come and it's like, you know, I really want to work for the Reds and, you know, I'm a lifelong Reds fan and all this stuff. And little do they know they're talking to the GM. And it's like, you don't necessarily have to know it's the GM, but if you're going for one specific team or like one specific position, then have a little background on it. Like just, you know,
do your homework,
knowing what you want. And if you don't know what you want,
do your homework.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You got to do your homework. I preach that obviously in my day job, but when it comes to networking, you have to do your day job. But don't you agree, Neil?
You know, it is, when we interviewed Alex Halloran, you know, he's in the sales side of the sports business, and there's a lot to be gained from that. And one of the things, look, I've been selling and working on the marketing side a long time. And one of the things I learned early on is that it's great to, try to be as observant as you can, but you don't have to be in front of somebody to be observant. You now have all of these amazing tools online, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I just showed my age, of course. But my point is that do your homework, do your advanced planning. Did you find that, the advanced planning, Gabby, was something that really helped you when you got out there?
Yeah. And I think it was something that I didn't really do at the start of my interviewing and I'm applying for jobs. And it definitely showed. And, as I kind of did more and realized how important it was, one, it helped build connections with them because I found something in common from their LinkedIn page or whatnot. And it gives common ground. It makes you more comfortable. And I also just think, so many of these people you're going to be interviewing with, they all started from interns. They all started from some low position. And to me, it made it more comfortable. It's like they know what I'm going through. They didn't just show up one day and become a director. They know that this can be scary and they're human too. And that just kind of, for me, having a little bit of background on them made me a little more comfortable going into interviews.
And you just talked about how everyone in their positions have been interns before. So can you talk about the importance specifically of getting internships?
Great question.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, in sports, there's a lot of people that want to work the same few jobs, and there's not a lot of them. We hire 5 interns for our baseball ops internship program, and we had over 1,000 applicants.
Wow.
So, it's a lot of people for very few positions. And kind of having that internship, especially for those next steps, to getting that full-time job, having that internship and that experience and working with the team and everything 100% sets you apart and gives you an edge over someone who didn't. And it's just the stuff I thought I knew going into my internship doesn't compare to what I came out of my internship with. You think you know so much until you're actually in it. You really don't. And that was just a huge learning curve.
Do you have someone in your life that you would classify as a mentor and somebody that has been, who's that person that you call when you're having a bad day? Who's that person that if there's something thrown at you, you're not quite sure what to do, somebody you can call? Do you have a mentor?
I think in terms of just the whole, I'm having a bad day, that kind of thing. I guess I do. I have some friends that are a little bit older than me that have gone through it. And so kind of in those struggles and trying to apply and getting rejections, that's who I really lean on. One of them, one of my best friends that I actually worked FAU Baseball with me, Carolyn Sherpy, she now works with the Astros Major League team. She's 4 years older than me, 3 years older than me. But just having someone who's gone through it all right before me, every time it was another no in an interview, she's been through it. She knows what to say. But I think also Coach Mack with FAU has been a huge help. He's the head coach there. He's been there, I think, 30 years now. And he's been a huge part in getting me here and kind of, giving me advice of, how to be successful here.
You talked a little bit earlier about the elevator pitch, and that always fascinates me because, look, we've all heard the expression, you only have, one chance to make a first impression, and, the first 2 minutes, people make up their minds one way or the other. Tell me about how you approached your elevator pitch, and did you practice it before you kind of went out there with it?
Yeah. So for me, it was in a lot of my classes.
Okay.
It was an assignment with every business class I took. So it was just kind of something I had to have done in order to pass my class.
Sure.
So that was definitely an advantage for me for kind of really nailing it down, because I had my professors and classmates kind of there to help improve it each time. So kind of, I guess, something I had that, not everyone is going to have to kind of really nail it down. But it, like what you said, is so true. Just that first impression matters, and just making a good first impression really is so helpful.
And to me, I just want to go back a little bit, because what I love about your trajectory is that it seems so strategic. This whole conversation, I just keep hearing the word strategy. And one thing that we both have in common, other than us getting the red memo, sorry, Neil, you didn't get the red memo today.
That's okay. I did not get the memo, so I'm in my normal blue.
Cincinnati Reds, I'm trying to.
I know, man,
Okay.
SBRnet blue. What am I supposed to do?
Okay, fine. But what we have in common is that we both have work experience with the Reds and the Olympic movement. And I talk about this all the time. The Olympic movement, Olympic sports can be a breeding ground, and is often a breeding ground for professional sports, where you can really develop that skill set. So how would you say your role with USA Baseball prepared you for your roles in professional baseball?
Yeah. So honestly, I think it was less of the specific job I did. What I kind of did with that job isn't something I really do now at all, but just the people I worked with was what gave me the most skills to take from it to apply now. I was working with, the coaches were previous major league players, previous minor leaguers. The players were kids that would go on to get drafted, or kids from, these top schools in the country, and kind of so many different personalities, especially with the players, and kind of having to, communicate with them and, especially advocate for myself. And, I'm here for a reason, and this is my job. If you don't like what I have to say, that's too bad. I am doing my job. And especially in a lot with dealing with the players, sometimes they didn't have that strict rules that we had with, this team. So kind of learning how to deal with a lot of different personalities was a huge thing I learned there. And then again, like I said, the coaches were former big league players and all. So that just being able to pick their brain was just incredible.
It's always interesting to me. A lot of students, they think they're going to start, at some sort of major league level or big. I know you seem to understand that you were going to start in the minor leagues, and you did. How important was that minor league experience for you?
I mean, it was huge. It is a huge misconception. People just think they're going to get that first job and it's going to be a major league job. And, like I said, just for the internship, we have over 1,000 applicants, and that's just one team. Now you have, 30 teams who may not even have 5 positions open. There's not a lot of positions open with the major league teams. And so getting that minor league experience, building those connections, building that trust with an organization, that's a huge thing. And for me personally, I didn't play baseball. So, right. I played softball, but it was, when I was a lot younger. So pitch recognition, I was terrible at it. And, this was a really great experience, to figure that out and kind of when it was a lot less pressure.
To me, what you just talked about a little bit was just how difficult it is to kind of get a job in baseball. And you talk about the 1,000 applications for your internship. So I can imagine how difficult it is for a professional world. So can you talk about or provide any strategies or tips, because you're an insider, in regards to good strategies on how to get your foot in the door in baseball? How do you get that foot in the door?
I think, so two things. One, you're going to hear no a lot. It just is what it is. Don't let it discourage you because something will, yeah, exactly. It's nothing personal against you. There were, hundreds of people out of those 1,000 applicants we wanted to hire. We just don't have that many positions. So it's, not necessarily something was wrong with you. You're a great candidate and someone's going to want to hire you. We wish we could have hired you. So it's, don't take it personally. You're going to hear no, just move on to the next one. And then the other thing is, again, with the networking, reach out to people. You see someone on LinkedIn that has a position you're interested in or with a team you're interested in, reach out to them. I used to think I was so annoying reaching out to people. They have a million things on their plate, but I wouldn't be here if, I didn't reach out to someone to help me. The people who helped me wouldn't be here if they didn't reach out to someone. So we all just kind of recognize that's part of our job. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for someone else. So now it's our turn to kind of help the next group of people.
Gabby, were you involved in the interview process? Did you review a lot of the resumes? You said of the 1,000 resumes. I'm curious.
I did this year. Yeah, this was my first year and it was a record number.
Okay, here we go. Tell me what stood out to you. I mean, you're looking at resumes, you're putting them in the yes pile and the no pile. How do you get into the yes pile? What was in a resume that really kind of said, you know what? I think I want to interview this person, or I want to move to the next step with this person. What attracted you in terms of resumes?
Outside of just the, they have really good experience, whatnot, attention to detail was the biggest thing. That was the easiest way to put someone in the no pile. We had people who would submit a cover letter and it's addressed to a different team, or they didn't take out one of the put team name here kind of thing, little things like that, or just in the resume, a bunch of grammar and misspellings. And it's, take time and take pride in what you're submitting. And if you're submitting thing with all these grammar mistakes, does that mean you can't do the job? No, but can we trust you to, make sure you take care of all these little things that are really important, even if they seem minuscule. So I think attention to detail is the biggest thing.
With all the tools that are out there now that are available, there is no excuse for there being spelling errors, grammar errors, punctuation errors. I mean, I use a couple of different AI tools for writing, and I have to admit, even my friends are like, dude, when did you get so smart? I'm like, hey, I am not that smart, but the AI is really smart. So, hey, Gabby, look, we're coming kind of to the end. So I want to ask you, finally, what piece of advice would you have for students coming out of school, let's say this year, maybe next year, on really how to get that great first job in sports?
I mean, yeah, it's again going to be networking. Go to those events, reach out to people on LinkedIn, go to, professors you have, or work with sports teams at your college, talk to them. People want to help. They want to see you succeed and, make that good first impression. If you are a good person and show you're willing to, do what it takes, people are going to want to help you and they're going to reach out to connections. They're going to, do what they can to help you succeed. So just, reaching out to whoever you can is really going to be so helpful.
Gabby, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I thought this was an incredibly enlightening, and I think this is one of those interviews that students really should pay attention to, because I think that your story is very much like what the real story is, starting, at your school, going to the minor leagues, then moving to the major leagues is really what, how, one does get that, great first job in sports. Gabby, again, Dr. G and I want to thank you for coming on My First Job in Sports.
Thank you guys so much. Really good time.
Thank you for tuning in to My First Job in Sports. This show has been produced by Brad Maybe. Back episodes can be found at sportsmarketanalytics.com, on the SBRnet YouTube channel, or all major podcast platforms. If you like the show, give us a great review. Also, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, or X.